Hello, welcome to a bonus episode of Hockey Inside Out. How long do you think the fans' love affair with head coach Martin St. Louis is going to last? If you look online, it seems like some people are already starting to turn on him. How much longer do you think he has before he kind of gets the heat that some other coaches got? Stu?
I think another year. I think at this point next season, if they're in the same position they are now, I think people will start questioning Marty St. Louis and his concepts. He doesn't like to use the word system. As Rick has mentioned on several previous shows, like in their own zone, they look lost at times. Like they don't know where to go, who's covering who, what's going on. As I've mentioned previously, I think that's why I think there will be changes behind the bench during the offseason. I think he needs somebody with more NHL experience as a head coach to help him out behind the bench. I think that will probably happen. But all coaches were hired to be fired, and I think he's ninth in seniority right now in the NHL in coaches, and he's only been on the job for 2 years. So I think at this point, it's all been roses and everything. And Marty, he's a smart guy, and he's great in the press conferences, and he has a lot of cool sayings and that. But at the end of the day, you got to win as an NHL coach. And I think next year at this point, if they're in a similar situation where the goal differential is like 40 or 50 goals, and they're still looking a little lost in their own end. I think that's when fans are going to start wondering. And maybe even Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon start wondering if he's the right guy moving forward with the rebuild.
Yeah, I think that Montreal, it's a lucky place for Marty St. Louis to be, both in terms of the rebuild and the fan base in Montreal is more engaged than most other fan bases. They pay attention more to details, because if you look at some of the things that were accomplished this season, I do think Marty and the coaching staff have bought themselves a lot of grace and a lot of time. You look at the reaction against the Coyotes. Juraj Slafkovsky takes the second high-sticking penalty of the game. He sits, but it's for one shift. And I'm pretty sure when they put Joshua Waugh out there in his spot on the top line, he was just told, watch Joshua Waugh's stick discipline. Watch how he engages in battles with the puck in tight. His stick is low, and he's hard on it. It's not floating in the air, hitting guys in the face. Pay attention. Next shift out, Slafkovsky goes out and just runs through guys and plays great. So it's little things like that where I think previous coaches would sit Slafkovsky for like the rest of the period or the rest of the game kind of situation. Or you see the power play, which was dreadful for almost the entire time under St. Louis. And now you have that 5-man unit that they're not killers on the power play, but they move the puck in a way that is a top unit. They look like a top unit in the NHL now. And they're figuring out things. I think they can overhandle the puck a little bit too much. And sometimes they got to learn that you just throw the puck on and you're all good shooters. And sometimes you just need to not be patient. But there's been some major improvements. But hey, if they go through next year and they're still allowing 300 goals a year, despite the goaltending being generally very good, there's going to be some questions. I think defensive play is the next thing where they have to start improving. It has to be very visible that they're improving defensively, or else the Heat will get turned on. But I do think they've done a good job pushing that further down the line because they've improved in other areas.
Well, I think they pushed it farther down the line for Martin St. Louis because he did come in with the situation being somewhat of a rebuild, if you will. And, they've harped over and over about it's going to take time, it's going to take patience. We have to develop our young players, which is all fine and dandy, but when it comes down to the end of the day and you come down to the end of the year or mid-year, the bottom line is wins and losses and how how your team plays overall. And I'm thinking that if they don't see some improvements in a number of areas starting next year, then things are going to start to get a little bit heated, and rightfully so, because that's the nature of the beast. And, Martin St. Louis is the first one to know how it works, and they're going to have to try and find ways to make improvements in a number of areas to get a better game out there, because if not, they're going to have to hear about it.
Well, when you mentioned Slafkovsky there, Andrew, and that one hand on the stick thing with him drives me crazy. Like, so many of the penalties are getting is because he's just got the one hand waving it around like a wand. He's reckless with it. And I asked Marty after the Arizona game when he took 2 penalties, and he had a very short answer. Well, he's a young player. He's learning, which is fine. And as you said, he sat him for one shift. But Arbor Jack guy takes a couple of dumb penalties. He's a healthy scratch. for a game or two. And I know it's different strokes for different folks. I know one's a number one overall pick, but I think moving forward, Rick, you would know this better than me. When you start treating different players differently, I'm not sure how that works in the locker room. And I know Uri Slafkovsky's 19, is a number one overall pick, and Arbor Xhekaj was never drafted, and he's been in Laval. But you wonder if Arbor's thinking to himself, man, I got made a healthy scratch for that. He got sat for one shift.
Yeah, no, it is tough. You got to handle each guy, with tender gloves, if you will, and sometimes it's not fair, and that's been the case, for a long time. But is it right? I'm not totally sure on that. But listen, you got to find ways to get your players to perform each and every night, and each one has to be handled differently. And coaching is about pushing all the right buttons, and certain buttons for some work, some don't for others, and that's a challenge that you have. But the biggest challenge is to make sure that your players respect what you're telling them, and they perform. And believe me, it's not easy in today's game.
Well, one thing for certain, there's no coach in Canadians history who's ever had less pressure on him than Martin St. Louis coming into the job. No other coach has ever been in a full rebuild where wins don't matter, right? And Canadians, it's always been, it used to be Stanley Cup or nothing. So he's had it's been an easier path for him to this point. But again, next year, I think, is when the heat's going to get turned up.
And he's a likable guy. He's a hockey Hall of Famer. So, that's the other thing, too. It wasn't just some unknown guy that you kind of heard about. It's like, it's Martin St. Louis coming in here. So I think that definitely helped as well.
And he's a smart guy. And as they said right from the time when they were looking for a coach, they wanted a modern day coach. And he is the definition of a modern day coach.
An effective communicator with the media and the fans too, right?
And the players. And that's a big part of doing that job. But again, as we've said, at the end of the day, it's all about winning.
Well, share your thoughts in the comment section below. Has your love affair with Martin St. Louis ended, or are you still giving him some more time? And make sure you check out hockeyinsideout.com to see the full episode.